Stop me if you've heard this one before. Zion Williamson is injured and the Pelicans lost. It's time for the Pelicans to have some tough conversations, and I'll tell you what those are in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Promise you this one's not going to be pretty. Let's go.
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans in NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and available on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider, credential member of the media, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Tuesday. We got a lot to talk about after the Pelicans get demolished by the Boston Celtics, 122-90. No Zion Williamson in this one. We're going to lead with that. We got to get into just the front office, the coaching, everything with this team because big changes have to happen now. We're going to cover it all in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the number one Pelicans podcast covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join over 12,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well, and become an everydayer. It means you listen Monday through Friday to the Locked On Pelicans podcast. If you're an everydayer, let me know in the comments down below. Let me know what you think about this game. Not going to be pretty. And also, you can watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network every weekday at 10:30 a.m. Same place you watch your Pelicans play. So driving home from this game, which I left early because you could tell they weren't going to come back and I wanted to catch part of the World Series, and oh boy, was that awesome. A song came on the radio by a band I like and a song I like. It's called Dead Man's Party by Oingo Boingo, which oddly played my parents' wedding, which is a fun fact. There's a couple of lyrics in there that just like hit me as I was listening to that, driving home from this disaster of a game. I'm going to read it to you. I'm not going to sing it. I'm all dressed up with nowhere to go, walking with a dead man over my shoulder. Does that not describe this Pelicans team right now? All dressed up with nowhere to go. Where's this team heading? Walking with a dead man over my shoulder. Basically everyone associated with this franchise right now. Goes on to being like waiting for an invitation to arrive, going to a party where no one's still alive. That kind of sums up this team a little bit here. You know, and that Pelicans loss to the Boston Celtics sums it up too. And let's start with Zion Williamson. Injured. Game 3. Now, he might actually be hurt and can't play. You know what? Injured players are injured. We respect that here. But this was supposed to be different. This season was supposed to be different, and you're already falling into things we've seen in Game 3. You know, when he got ruled out was basically 2 p.m. on game day, not on the injury report before that. Pre-game media availability, 5:15 with Willie Green said he was out. Zion Williamson warms up on the court about an hour before game time, so it should have been around like 5:55 or so. Yeah, 5:55 or so. They already knew he wasn't playing, right? You know, they spent all off season selling Zion Williamson. Joe Dumars doubling down on Zion Williamson. Again, he could be hurt. Hurt guys don't need to play. Injuries happen. But this was supposed to be different. And now it's game 3 and it's the same stuff. Nothing feels different. Contrast that with Jaylen Brown. He was a game time decision. The Celtics were playing on the second night of a travel back-to-back. This wasn't like they played last night and were still at home. They had to get on a plane, get here, get to bed late. He was a game time decision. He played. Zion didn't. Now, we don't know the extent of the injury. You know, no teams tend to be very forthcoming with that. There's some question about, did it happen in practice? It sounds like it happened in the Spurs game, so why wasn't he on the injury report? And that could easily be explained by, you know, he went through practice warmups and it didn't feel right, so they then put him on the injury report. But they practiced yesterday so that would have been Sunday, and he wasn't on the injury report. And Willie Green said he couldn't go through the whole practice. So he probably should have been listed on Sunday here. There's just more weirdness around how his injuries are handled. And again, I'm not saying this was rest or not. It's not debating that. It doesn't even matter here. There was weirdness about it. This was supposed to be different, and it's not different. That's going to bother Pelicans fans. You can immediately see the reaction to him playing was just like, yeah, it's not going to happen, right? He was listed as questionable. That's 50-50. No one thought he was going to play. Everyone I talked to at the arena was basically like, yeah, no, he's not going to. That's not necessarily people at the team who wouldn't have the answer to that, right? That's media, other folks around there. There were a lot of agents and stuff at the arena tonight. No one thought he was going to play, right? And then this is when Jordan Poole and Trey Murphy are supposed to step up, but they haven't. Dre had an awful game. Poole was better than he's been, but I don't think he was great. Just wasn't good enough. When Zion went down, this was Joe Dumars in the front office's plan, and it completely fell on its face here. This loss is a flat out failure. The Boston Celtics, to close the game out, went on a 31-4 run. 31-4. Now, things can turn around quickly. It's game 3 of an 82-game season. You're 0-3. You do have a tough 3-game road trip coming up. But things can turn around. Trey could make some shots. The team has been finishing terribly at the rim. They could get better at that. That changes the complexion of the past 3 games that we have seen. And I think in the first 2 games, they've actually looked pretty good. But let me ask you this. And this is a rhetorical question. I'll pause for dramatic effect. Do you think they're going to? Do you feel this team will have things be different? Joe Dumars this offseason mentioned, the insanity definition, right? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. He referenced that in terms of Zion Williamson needing to make changes so that he's not hurt. Well, he's hurt. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, isn't that what the Pelicans are doing right now with their 0-3 start? You're seeing them lose the exact same way that they've lost before. If they were coming in and they had some of that fixed and they lost different ways, you could sell me on some of this. But right now, given the way they've looked, it's time to have some tough conversations at the Pelicans facility. I want to get into that a little bit more in the next segment here. You're also going to want to listen to this whole show because I'm going to drop something about DeAndre Jordan and his contract, and we saw him play in this game. That's going to make you question things too. We got a lot more to cover in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride a hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks or not if you're the Pelicans. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. And it just keeps every game more exciting, especially when you hope your team is going to make that late push. Look, World Series Game 3, Shohei Ohtani plus 150 to hit a home run. That was easy money right there. Worth staying up late for. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com right now to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Again, that is $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins over at FanDuel. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is also brought to you by Game Time. Basketball season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. Look, even when they're losing, the Pelicans are fun. It's fun to go to games, and there were moments in there when it's like, oh yeah, this isn't great, and then you look around and you see just kids enjoying themselves, and you remember that this is part of it, right? But being tickets to go to those games and have those experiences can be a headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, prices that jump right before you check out, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is just be there enjoying the atmosphere and cheering on your team. And that's where FanDuel comes in. It's the app that gives fans the advantage for scoring amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. I recommend Game Time to everyone when they want to go to a Pelicans game. I don't have access to tickets like that. I just tell people go to Game Time. You're going to get the best deal possible. And I love that what you see is what you pay. There's no hidden fees at checkout. And I like that if you're going to go to a place you've never been, maybe a different venue, you can see the view from your seat before you buy. And their zone deals are a game changer. You pick the section, Game Time picks your seats, you save big. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. That's code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go with Game Time. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast and join over 11,000 Pelicans fans 12,000 Pelicans fans on YouTube as well. We're covering everything you want to know about this New Orleans Pelicans team. Let me know what you thought about this game. I'm thrown off because it's like 2:30 in the morning when I'm recording this after an 18 inning World Series game here. And I'm still fired up about this loss to the San Antonio Spurs. Let me know what you thought about this game or the World Series game in the comments down below. This was a disgusting loss for New Orleans. 122-90 against a team that doesn't have Jason Tatum. Right, their best player, Jason Tatum, not playing in this. Their center rotation might actually be worse than the New Orleans Pelicans. And you went out, as Willie Green said, got punked on your home court against a previously 0-3 Boston team that's playing on the second night of a back-to-back flying in from New York. You can't let that happen. There's nothing about that you can let happen here. Like, this is, in my opinion, disgusting. So this is the type of loss that makes you go like, I thought, again, things were supposed to be different. Nothing about this game felt different from what we've seen from the Pelicans in previous years, right? This is the Joe Dumars era now. He talked a big game this offseason, and this is what happens. No one is excused from blame here, right? What this means, going back to Joe Dumars' definition of insanity, doing the same thing, expecting different results. This team needs to make changes. This team has to make immediate and big changes. Look, that falls in one area, your head coach. They probably have to make a change here. For better or worse, if you want things to be different, you have to do things differently. This team needs a new energy. They keep losing in the same way. To start the game, the starters were -12. The game ended on a 31-4 run for Boston. There was a 14-0 run without Victor Wembanyama on the court for the San Antonio Spurs. There was a 20-0 run without Ja Morant for the Memphis Grizzlies. You know, how poorly this team has played in the second half of games. And truthfully, this isn't me being like, Willie Green needs to make more adjustments. Willie Green needs to use his timeouts better. None of that matters to me, actually. I don't think the timeout thing holds any weight to me whatsoever. When teams go on runs against the Boston Celtics, Joe Mazzulla doesn't call timeouts. And he's considered one of the best coaches in the game right now. None of that stuff matters. This is simply a results thing. And the results haven't been good enough. Will the Pelicans make a change? Now, this doesn't need to be tomorrow. They have a tough 3-game road trip coming up. And it's not like you can install a new offense or put in new things, particularly when you're on the road and you're barely getting practice times in. The Pelicans have 4 games this week. They have 2 practices. Like, you just don't have time to do much, particularly when you want these guys to be somewhat well rested here. But this needs to at least be a serious conversation at the Pelicans facility. This needs to be a conversation that they are having of, do we remove Willie Green as head coach and go with, whether it's James Borrego or someone else as interim right now. It needs to be a conversation. Maybe they don't pull the trigger on it, but if you're not having that conversation, that is a much bigger problem, in my opinion. I heard from a few people, not directly associated with the team before this game, like wondering if, the Zion injury. And no one knows who made the call for him not to play, whether that was Zion himself or the team. And again, it doesn't even matter here. It was supposed to be different. He just shouldn't be missing time. It feels like this early when he's fresh, right? On a murky timeline of kind of what this all looks like here. And again, I'm not looking for the team to actually give like, here's exactly when it happened and all the specific details on that. You don't need that. No team does that here. But I've heard people say like, this was a setup for, this is to set up Willie Green to fail. Here's the thing with that though. You don't need to set your head coach up to fail to fire him. You can just make that change if you want. Unless you need to sell it to ownership. They're the ones that ultimately sign off on this. But whatever the, general manager, executive vice president of basketball operations, whatever the title is, lead basketball decision maker, whatever that person wants to do should just be what you do. That's why you hire those people. You don't want your owner particularly meddling in some of this stuff. Does that work for the Dallas Cowboys, where it feels like Jerry Jones is actually actively like making them worse? Right? Like the ownership, should just sign off on the person you hire to make that decision, empower your people in a sense, right? But if you're setting up Willie Green to fail, it's so you can sell this to ownership more so. That's what that implication to me is, that they won't do it otherwise. I don't love that. At that point, then it doesn't quite feel like your lead basketball decision maker, in this case, Joe Dumars, is a puppet, because Joe Dumars is not going to be a puppet for anybody. But they need to be empowered to do whatever it is they feel they need to do. And so if Joe Dumars feels like we got to fire Willie Green, you've got to fire Willie Green. If Joe Dumars doesn't feel they even need to have a conversation about moving on from head coach Willie Green, then we have concerns about Joe Dumars and whether he's the right person for the job or not. And look, they rushed that hire. It was just predetermined that this is what they were going to do. They didn't go through a process on it. And maybe Joe Dumars works out and he's great and wins titles here, but you can still hate the process that got you there. But the end results matter. So that's important too. But they need to be able to make this call. And no matter what, something needs to change around this team. And the most obvious and the easiest thing now is the head coach. You need to get someone who can get the offense going in the half court in this game. Let me pull up the numbers here. The Pelicans had an offensive rating of 74.7 in the half court. That's bad. Like, I was going to use some words I don't use on the show. That's atrocious. They looked awful in this game. The defense was terrible. It allowed 127.4 points as a defensive rating, so 127.4 points per 100 possessions. They were abysmal in this one. Nothing about this was good. They had an field goal percentage of 38.7. I can't tell you how bad that is. It's really bad. They need to do something to just change this team. Someone who can get the offense going. And the way that they're going now, if you just hope it's going to change, it's not going to. It would have been by now. This was supposed to be different this year. And look, you probably can't install something completely new. What you're trying to do right now is just triage the situation at this point. And it probably is going to be somewhat of like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. But if you want to change the perception around this team, something they really need to do, and something that Zion missing game 3 reinforces what everyone already thinks about this team, you probably have to change the head coach. It at least signals like, hey, where we are is unacceptable and we want better. Now, I know ownership cares. I know everyone around this team cares. I know the players care. But the fans don't feel that everybody does. That's disappointing. You are losing the fan base through all of this. They need to make some changes. Again, it doesn't have to be, today, where I'm deep into Tuesday morning now, but you've got to do something. And you can't just be like, whatever it is what it is, and we'll roll with it and see if it all works out. If it was going to work out, it would have worked out years ago or already by now. That's kind of where we are with this team. And the bigger concern is, do you have faith that they will do that, right? Do you have faith that ownership can make the decisions they need to make? Do you have faith that the front office can make the decisions they need to make? I'm going to tell you something about the DeAndre Jordan deal in the next segment here that's going to make you wonder about that, I think, a little bit. Let's I've already teased it a couple times. Let's get into that coming up here next. It has to do with DeAndre Jordan. It's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans brought to you by Rippling. If you're a business owner, here's the truth. SaaS promised to make work easier, but now the average company is buried by hundreds of apps that slow down your teams and simply don't work together. That's not SaaS. That's sad. Software as a disservice. That's why you need Rippling. Rippling is the unified platform for global HR, payroll, IT, and finance all in one place. And they've helped millions of businesses replace a mess of disconnected tools with one system designed to give leaders clarity, speed, and control here. What I love about Rippling is how it's removed bottlenecks Busy work that slow down teams, everything from onboarding to payroll to IT access, runs automatically and perfectly in sync, and it's seriously simple to use, gives companies one source of truth for their people, data, and everything they touch. So whether you want to run your entire HR, IT, and finance operations or as one, or just fill in the gaps in your software stack, Rippling can do it all. And right now you can get 6 months free when you go to rippling.com/lockedonnba or rippling.com/lockedonnfl. Learn more at rippling.com/lockedonnba. That's rippling.com/lockedonnba for 6 months free. Today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is also brought to you by Monarch. Let's be honest, most of us, the light is bright in my eyes here, can't even name all of our financial accounts, let alone what they're worth. So between 401ks, savings, and investments, it's easy to lose track, and that can mean leaving money on the table. So that's why I started using Monarch, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. It's helped me organize my accounts, track my spending, and get a better handle on my investments without having to touch a spreadsheet, which I absolutely don't want to do. And I love that I can review everything with my fiance. We can see our shared goals and make better financial decisions together. And Monarch's visual dashboards and smart tools make it so much easier to understand where my money is going and how to make it work harder for me. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarch.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarch.com, code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We are here Monday through Friday, the #1 Pelicans podcast, covering everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. So please subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Join us on YouTube. Watch us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Make Locked On Saints with Ross Jackson your second listen today. Tyler Shuck, new QB. Okay, I'm on board with at least giving it a try. He's breaking down everything black and gold over at the Locked On Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Also, don't forget Locked On LSU, just looking at the Brian Kelly fallout with Matt Moscona, also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So I want to look at a couple more things from this game as we start to wrap up the show here. This is the Pelicans losing 122-90 to the Boston Celtics here in New Orleans. Celtics on the second night of a back-to-back. New Orleans having 2 days off, and this is what you get. Pretty bad here. Let's start with some of the rebounding. The Boston Celtics outscored New Orleans in terms of second chance points here, 23-16. This was going to be a problem we expected this season. It was mitigated in game 1. Game 2 was really bad, also bad in this game. And that's one of the reasons why they went out while Yves Missi was injured and waived Jaden Springer and signed DeAndre Jordan. Look, DeAndre Jordan was at home on a couch. He's I don't want to say washed. He had some nice moments in this game, but this is someone who is older, in 11 minutes of action, had 7 points, 5 boards. It's not bad. Was a -5, which is actually one of the better ones on the team. When they signed him, this team had about $4.2 million in room against the luxury tax. So when they signed him to, his vet minimum deal, which is slightly subsidized by the NBA, but still is going to count a lot of money against the cap here, I thought it would be a non-guaranteed deal. And then I found out tonight that the signing of DeAndre Jordan is a fully guaranteed contract for the rest of the year. Now, this is the type of thing that hurts you. It might not sound like much, but now the Pelicans are $1.9 million from the luxury tax here. There's something called opportunity cost. The definition is the loss of potential gain from other alternatives when one alternative is chosen. There might be a trade, and I've preached the financial flexibility that New Orleans needs to have. There might be a trade that they can't do because they would take back, say, $2.5 million in cap space, and that would put them into the luxury tax because of this fully guaranteed deal. I don't know if DeAndre Jordan had any other offers on the table. There was no need to fully guarantee this contract whatsoever to the point where you can't waive him and get him off your books. Or if there is a trade that would put them into the luxury tax, you're going to need to attach additional second round picks to offload a contract or DeAndre Jordan specific contract here. That's not great, right? Like that's throwing good money after bad money or good assets after bad assets. Who were they bidding against for DeAndre Jordan to need to do that? if his agent comes to you and is like, you better fully guarantee it, just move on to the next person. He didn't play in the first game. He played 11 minutes in this one. When your team is fully healthy, when Kevon Looney comes back, where does DeAndre Jordan fit in? You started Messi in this game. You're going to play Queen heavy minutes. You have Looney, who you signed to do some of this too. Where does DeAndre Jordan fit in that you needed to fully guarantee his deal? That's what's so frustrating about that. This was not a move they needed to make. It's cost them potential opportunities in the future, or means you're just going to have to use other assets to get off the contract. That's not good front office work here. So when I talk about, are they going to be able to figure this out? And they're trying to win now because you don't have next year's first round pick. Are you going to be able to make the trade that helps you? Probably, maybe, but maybe not now. And I at least would rather have the option to versus not. This isn't a big deal on the surface, right? Like, whatever. But this can also be something like death by, I don't want to say 1,000, but like 50 cuts, 100 cuts. It's these little things that can add up to actively harm you later down the line too. Remember using 4 second-round picks to dump, I completely blanked on the name, but you know who I'm talking about. Like, this isn't not at all what this team needed to be doing. And it's just these moves that make you go, what is going on here? And that's why you need to do things to change that immediately. Look, Jeremiah Fears looked like a rookie. The Pelicans are struggling to finish at the rim. He was 1 of 11 tonight. He's a rookie. This is going to happen. This is always the risk of the route that the Pelicans took. Trey Murphy has not played like the all-star he said he wants to be this year. Refs were weird in this game, but the Pelicans went to the line 13 more times than Boston. This is a big part of just math. Boston took 56 threes, made 18 of them. The Pelicans were 9 of 36. Team doesn't have the shooting. It's a concern. We knew it. They have mismanaged a lot with this team, and it's leading to this start where you've just got to make big changes. Will they? We'll find out. I want to talk more about this in tomorrow's episode of Locked On Pelicans. That's going to do it for this episode. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter, and I'll see you all tomorrow.